It has been approximately 2,600 years since the Jews have mourned over the loss of their sacred temple. When the first temple was destroyed in 586 BCE by the Babylonian Empire, the Jewish people were in great devastation.
Ever since then, the Jewish people and religion have never been the same. But what if the first temple was still around today?
One of the main cultural effects that the destruction had on Judaism was the formation of synagogues. When the temple existed, the Jewish nation commonly gathered there. Since the Jews were a minority, they knew it was very important for them to stick together. Therefore, when the temple was destroyed, they built synagogues in order to establish a meeting place. However, since there were so many synagogues being formed, Jews no longer united at one common place and began to disperse and form different communities. Therefore, the Jews were in a diaspora, which caused a lack of unity within the Jewish nation, as well as the formation of different sects of Judaism.
But if the temple was never destroyed, there would be one common location for all Jews to meet. Therefore, the diaspora would not be as large, there would not be as many sects of Judaism, and the Jewish people would be a much more unified nation. Judaism would be more based on community and less based on individuality.
Due to the destruction of the first temple, the Jews were in a lower state of spirituality. It was as if the whole atmosphere was suddenly devoid of holiness. As a result, prophecy was no longer available to the Jewish people, and God's presence was no longer as clear. Therefore, the Jewish people had a harder time connecting to God, and eventually, some lost faith and began to question God's existence. Because people no longer had a clear knowledge of God, the Jews slowly began to assimilate, bringing the Jewish people to where they are today.
However, if the first temple was never destroyed, things would be very different. In the olden days, when the first temple existed, God's presence was very clear. Open miracles were a daily occurrence and could be witnessed by anyone. For instance, whichever way the wind was blowing, the smoke of the sacrifices in the temple always went straight to heaven. Also, one miracle that the land exhibited was that every 6 years there was a bumper crop so that the Jews could take the 7th year off from working the land. In addition, there were many prophets within the Jewish nation that helped the Jews communicate with God. Therefore, it was very difficult to deny God's existence, and those who assimilated were few in number. If the temple still existed, there would be nearly no secular Jews, and common issues such as intermarriage would rarely come up like they do today.
The first temple was ruled by King Solomon, the son of King David. King Solomon was a God-fearing, pious Jew, and the wisest man to ever have lived. The second temple was ruled by a cruel king named Herod. Herod and his parents converted to Judaism, but Herod was raised in favor of Roman culture. Therefore, Herod was practically a puppet of the Romans. Herod murdered many great rabbis because they got in the way of his goal to Hellenize Judaism.
But if the first temple was never destroyed, Judaism would still be ruled by members of King Solomon's lineage. Therefore, the negative effects of Herod ruling the Jewish nation would never have come to be, and instead, Judaism's role models would be the original Torah-observant Jews. Today's Judaism would have been much less affected by Hellenistic culture. In addition, Judaism would be much more based on biblical law, revolving around the temple, rather than rabbinic law that was instated due to the absence of the temple. Evidently, the destruction of the first temple had a massive effect on Judaism, and if this pivotal event had never occurred, Judaism would be a very different religion than what it is known as today.